So we're going to be talking about the power, the genesis of worker ownership in the restaurant and food service sector. I want to really focus in. I want folks to understand that the best laid intentions and values that each of our speakers has touched on only work if the business is able to succeed and to thrive. And these are businesses. And I think what's so critical about this solidarity economy work is that it's rooted in the underlying currency of capitalism, which is these businesses have to be profitable. It's all talk if you're going to run yourself into the ground, COVID or no COVID. So I want to hear from Reem. I'll start with you. What's been the reception in your community? How do customers and how does your broader community receive you as a worker-owned business? To what extent do you market that? And how, if you could talk, does your structure give you an advantage either in marketing or how are you embraced by the community? And you're on mute. There you are.
So yeah, just to be transparent, we're still working through worker ownership, so we haven't made that transition. What we have done though is sort of start to culturally make that transition. So as I'm kind of figuring out the finances of it all and sort of what does it mean to be a worker owner now, and what does that mean as me who spent as a sole owner building this from the ground up, what does that look like, and how do I want to relate to it? So there's a lot of deep existential questions there. I think for what was really stark and clear to me, because let me just backtrack a little bit to say that my experience being a worker owner at Arizmendi Cooperatives and sort of learning about the cooperative movement, one of the things that really stuck with me, and I experienced it, was my lived experience, is that it takes people time to be worker owners, psychologically. Even if you're in worker ownership, it takes at least a year. My mentor, Tim Hewitt, who's the part of the Arizmendi, he says that all the time. And I remember him coaching me through that because I was really impatient with some of the processes. And that's really true. I think the thing with COVID in particular, relating back to your first question of what has this pandemic done, is that I think it's really radicalized folks, or at least agitated them enough to question their conditions. One of the things that I think is really important, and this maybe goes back to my political work, is that we don't want to just replicate, just to be a worker owner by name. Well, one, the business has to do well, but two, we don't want to replicate the same things we see in the outside world, right? There's a lot of unlearning that has to be done around power and privilege. And even with the cooperative spaces, when you don't have good structures and you just have a flat structure, those sort of unseen and invisible power dynamics start to play out, right? So people in society who are used to being in positions of power just fill those vacuums, and the people who've internalized that they're not leaders sort of play those roles. So I didn't want that to be the case in my space. And it's a weird transition from the owner now to be a worker owner. So I wanted to be cognizant of that. And so it's funny because I think we're in a good place, because when I stated my intention and we're going to go through this process, my workers are okay, when do we learn about finances? And they want to jump into the weeds. And that's great, because that tells me they're ready. They're primed for worker ownership. And so we've built that foundation. But we're sort of really intentionally doing it. And we started this apprenticeship program, and that will be sort of the predecessor for writing the bylaws together. And they're learning about power and privilege and effective communication and, finance 101 and all these things to prepare them sort of psychologically to take on. Because I think people have sort of misconceptions of cooperatives that it's no bosses. I think there's even an acronym in the Bay Area called No Boss. I'm that's kind of a misnomer, because it's no, actually you have 17 bosses now. You're accountable to everyone and yourself. And so it's much harder work. And so we just want people to be prepared for that and to really be able to absorb that. And so, that's what we're doing this year. We have an apprenticeship program where 14 of our 24 workers are signed on, which is a great number. It just shows that they're ready and they want to do it. And we hope that we'll have bylaws written, the finances will be done. And I think it's put us in a really good position. Going back to your question around the pandemic, like we have been the most profitable that we've ever been actually in the pandemic, just feeding the people who are the most food insecure. Like we've really sort of been more razor focused. I love this idea of like fixed, I always built my business around a 40% labor line, and that's been fixed, but just like putting that in your fixed, like on your profit and loss. I love that idea. So I think in terms of sort of our vision and our focus and being razor sharp with that, I think it's made us in a better position to thrive once, things turn around with the larger economy. So what we're trying to do is sort of build that resilience. We're like preparing for battle.
I like that. Anyone else? I'm going to open it to see who else wants to tackle that question, answer that question. Otherwise, I'll call on some folks. Ellie, you look like you want to chime in.
I'll try and gather my thoughts. Yeah, I think I wrote down a little bit of what your question was around our marketing, around worker ownership, and how we've been embraced by the community. I think we talk about it all the time, but it's never really clear to people until they get here. And so it is when we talk about it, we try and let people know that we consider this to be something that the way that we're doing considering labor and how we work together to be just as important as sustainability. If we're talking about sustainability in hospitality, this is a way that it looks like. And this is a way that, you can take care of the people who are involved in bringing this to you. Like our dream is that we build a network of people, of like systems, food systems, where everyone is taken care of along the way. So that's like the vision that we let people know that we're on our way to. But it's really good to hear that people have been doing well. I think Tanám has had to take a big pause also. We are a place that we're not really selling food and beverage, we're selling interaction and connection. And we have a pretty tiny dining room where strangers get together around one common table. So it's just not working right now. But it's really where the biggest impact of our work has been. And so we're hedging our bets that, moving into takeout is not going to be the way. We have tried it and seen what it looks like. But I think for everyone involved, what has been really important is not necessarily like keeping your job or whatever, but that you get to make those decisions for yourself. And so we are doing that together. And I feel good in that, even though we're not quite there yet with welcoming people into our doors.
But thanks for really highlighting how critical it is that we not allow COVID to really shift forever, irreversibly shift the kind of the restaurant business to be about food delivery and on-demand food. It really is about the experience, the community, and all the stakeholders that make that plate of food or that beverage or that experience possible. And that can't happen but in a physical space. And to know that you all are this sacred lifeblood of communities, we have to be prepared to stand up for that. So thanks for highlighting that. James and Kayvan, what has it been like for you? How much do you market your journey to shared ownership or your experiences shared ownership, and how has your community embraced that?
I'll jump in real quick. I don't know how much we market it. It's a little bit harder to say. I think it's something we still struggle with, to be totally honest, and something we're still working on. But in other ways, I mean, in some ways, the idea and how we structured our business was actually about kind of making worker ownership attractive to other people. Part of it was I couldn't imagine a better way to get people excited about owning a business than having it be something that's like really fun and exciting. So a place that makes its own beer and has live music and comedy and, delicious food. I think all those things together kind of create a very exciting package for folks. And so like one of the things that we do when someone becomes an owner is we actually throw a giant party, tell them to invite their family, their friends, literally get up on the bar, tell, embarrassing stories about them and heartwarming things about them and how much they've achieved to become the owner that they should be. We invite our regulars, we invite people who become close to the restaurant. We actually knight them on the bar and make them owners. And, but then afterwards, we actually give them a t-shirt that says, owner. And it's got our different sort of crest that symbolizes our values. And the point is that when bartenders and servers are meeting tables, people will ask, like, what does that mean? You're an owner. And they have those conversations. And I think no one's ever heard of a worker owner cooperative, right? I mean, 99% of the staff that we hire has never heard of it. And slowly, as Reem was talking about with Arizmendi and Tim Hewitt, like eventually people start to be like, damn, you're saying I can actually own the business? Like first it's the culture and having that change and be like, wow, this is a really healthy, like people are respectful and people are really nice. And that kind of keeps people who are good at their jobs. And then slowly you sort of get into the team and then the idea of ownership. And then I think that's the best ambassador we could ever have, right? Is someone who's passionate and excited about being an owner, who gets to basically treat you great, give you a great product. And at the end of the day, like working people are super pragmatic because they have to be. And so you explain worker ownership to them, like, that sounds adorable. Good for you. You know what I mean? But then if you're like, no, we made that beer, we made that delicious food that's better than anyone else on our block, and I did it and I'm an owner, that changes like, oh, it actually works. I think that's the big conversation and keeps people really excited about us too, long term. I think it helps build regulars too, which is huge.
And Kayvan, I want to hear from you. There's something you say there that's really important to me is I too have a background in the labor movement. I was a union labor lawyer when I first started my career. And there's something that only recently, and I don't intend to politicize, there's only something that Biden has said recently, which is that there's an underlying dignity of work that I feel like is taboo to really talk about, but there's something incredibly humanizing and empowering and just downright it is when you're treated with respect for the work you do and you're recognized for the human being that you are. And I think what you all are exemplifying is to offer people with sacrifice, but to offer people the kind of the accoutrements and the respectful treatment that we deserve in the workplace, which is either hard fought and adversarial in organized labor, or it's just non-existent as a freelancer. And for so many restaurant workers, it has literally been centuries of oppression and abuse and underpayment and a lack of legal recognition and protection. So what y'all are doing to just give people a voice and the status as a human being is, I think we should recognize in and of itself important, regardless of whether we ever see a restaurant industry that's majority worker owned. Hopefully we do. But if not, there are beacons of humanity and fair treatment in a business that is largely known for, not treating people well or with respect. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Kayvan, how do you market this or do you?
Yeah, we beat our chest and wear all this stuff on our sleeve. I think it's really important. I had a big aha moment with regard to marketing about 10 years ago when we were opening our second store. We put a quarter page ad in the Westward. It's like the little stupid village page. I like phone books, these days more than anything. They don't really have much content. And you get lost in the sea of ads. I think it was $900 for a quarter page ad for a week, and we put a coupon in, and I think their circulation's 125,000, and we probably got 2 coupons back. I was like, there's got to be a better way to spend this money. So we started sponsoring a lot of comedy shows, film productions, things like that locally. At one point, we were sponsoring 40 comedy shows a month in Denver, in and around where our stores were. Ended up funding initially an art zine called Birdie that's now been around for 8 years. And we went away completely from putting, traditional marketing out there. There's no billboards, there's no print ads, there's no TV or radio, there's none of that. All of our marketing dollars started to go towards creative productions in our neighborhoods, and giving free food primarily to schools and nonprofits, and political campaigns and things like that we agreed with. And then we became like really politically engaged as a pizzeria, putting lockers out in front of our stores for people experiencing homelessness, where they could store their stuff. And then with my running for office, we became associated with a lot around drug policy and domestic violence and things of that nature. And so when I get to, this point of like good benefits and great pay and employee ownership, we tout that as often as we can. And what we find is that, we've got a following that we don't have to market ourselves. People know about us. People talk about us because we are different. I don't think you could find a restaurant, maybe not even another business in Colorado, that provides the benefits and having that ownership that we do. I challenge somebody to do it. I do all the time, and nobody can. And when a little pizzeria, can do it, we're not too little anymore, but when a pizzeria in general can do it, which a lot of folks don't think of as being the highest margin business, it shows what's possible in other industries and for other businesses. So we're very happy to talk about it. I think we've become a point person, a point company for folks to reach out and ask questions about this. Not just private industry folks, but people that work at state and local levels in the government to learn more about it. And we just became known for this stuff. And I think not only spreading, our brand in that way, just word of mouth to people. I think people appreciate, when we make a mistake, they're more apt to come back, because it's not about getting the cheapest price or, getting that deal. We have customers that come to us because they're loyal. And when we make a mistake, we're not only quick to fix it, but they appreciate that we're more than just a business that cares about the bottom line. And they're more apt to come back. They're more apt to tell their friends and their family. I couldn't imagine a better marketing strategy than just doing well by your employees, by your co-owners, by the neighborhoods in which you operate. I couldn't imagine marketing in any other way. And you can only do that if you operate ethically and operate, in a way that stands out.
Can I just add something really quickly that just came to my mind? Well, one, just the situation. I mean, for us, like our audience, obviously it's a consumer to some extent. Reem's has already sort of built its brand around the social justice values. So people already sort of are following our journey. And it's actually a funny predicament because a lot of it's like built. I mean, I named the restaurant after myself for lack of, I couldn't figure out another name. And so decentering myself from all of this has been really a funny journey. I'm like, can you just go talk to my workers? Like I literally have given NYT reporters like their number and they still don't reach out. And so there's a little bit of like, I feel a little disingenuous sometimes. We're like, we're going to be worker owned and I don't want to use it as a gimmick. And so that's been sort of a tricky way of like, how do I decenter myself from all of this? And how do I, equip my workers with the power to sort of really control this narrative? But I do think one of the audience that we have are other people in the restaurant industry that are sort of like, I feel like, and I've been in this work now for 5 years, like my colleagues who are other small business owners who are intrigued by all of this. They may even want out, but there's like sort of a demystification of co-ops that has to happen. And so we're being very transparent about our journey to the public so that hopefully other restaurants are inspired to follow suit. And so I always think about sort of my other audience being other people in the industry who might want to do this, because it's different to start a co-op from scratch than to transition from one structure to the other. So that's like some of the work that we're trying to do in terms of marketing is like, this can be done and look, we're doing it. And it's not always clean and it's not romantic, but it can be done, so just a thought.